Mhm. Aí não. É. Sai do chef. Aha. Okay. And so anytime it's time for me to move here now. Sorry, wait.
Hi everyone, for you all that are joining right now, we'll wait for 5 minutes so more people can join and then we'll start the webinar.
All right, great. No. So we'll wait like 5 minutes extra to see the number of people that join. Like 5 minutes extra. Oh, yeah, come. Ava. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, feel free. Oh, feel free. We are not live, so. um, I don't know. We good to go.
Great, so let's go ahead. First of
We can
all,
start.
hi and welcome. I'm Leticia from the WFF Forum, and thank you so much for joining our second episode of the culinary series. This is part of our Youth Toward Zero Food Waste campaign, where we want to teach you different ways to combat food waste, such as transforming food waste into delicious meals, indigenous techniques on food preservation, and much more. For this episode today, we're going to delve into creative cooking through indigenous techniques with Chef Abiro, who is here with us. Please join me all in welcoming Chef Abiro, who is going to host today's episode. The floor is yours.
All right. Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Just to be sure.
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. My name is Chef Abiro. I am an indigenous chef in Ghana, and my brand represents the promotion of Northern indigenous cuisine. And Northern indigenous cuisine means um, cuisine from Northern Ghana. And so today, as our main focus and goal is to find solutions and ways to solve food waste problems. And I'm sure that is the reason why um, the World Food Forum, in collaboration with the Global Youth Action, is promoting such an agenda. And so today we are working on zero food waste. And so typically in the West African kitchen, we are looking at some of the things that you can find as waste. And so typically in a West African kitchen, you can find waste as these, like carrot peels and like onion peels. You could find things like tubers of yam, some plantains, some gari, some eggs, and all those things. But today, we're going to be making an indigenous meal called wasawasa. And so wasawasa is, I call it the magic meal. It is a meal that is made from the peels of yam. So this is yam. I don't know if you can find yam in other parts of Europe, but yam is a tuber that is quite equivalent to like potatoes, either sweet potatoes or Irish potatoes. And so what we do here in Northern Ghana is that we use the peels of the yam, and then we sun dry it. You could do that as well in your hydrator or in your oven. And then once it's dried crispy well, you would have it in this powdered consistent form. So what we've done is that we've converted the peels of the yam into this powdered form. And that is the major ingredient that we are going to be using for our class today. So I just want to cut through the yam, peel it, so you see how a typical yam looks like. So for those who haven't seen yam before, this is how it is. It's just like your potatoes or sweet potatoes. And like I said, what we would use in making the wasawasa is the peels of this amazing yam. And so these peels that you see me cut off, I mean, typically in a West African kitchen or any kitchen in Africa, people would throw this away. This, together with some of these things, will go down the drain into the bin. But that is the amazing thing about wasawasa, because wasawasa makes use of this. We dry this and then we turn this into the powder. So I'll go ahead to demonstrate how we are going to use this powder to get an amazing dish. So put this in our bin.
This is really a magical meal. And you said people can do also with potato peels, right?
Yes, I mean, same, because yam has the same chemical properties as potatoes, because they are all tubers. And so the same starchy feel, the same texture, everything. It's just a difference in the flavor and the taste. That's just it. But they have the same properties. And so what you can do with the yam, you can do with the potato or sweet potatoes. And so to start with, first of all, we have our flour, the yam flour. And maybe for those in Nigeria, they call this the amala flour. The amala flour. So in Nigeria, they make a meal out of this same flour, but it has a different name. And so in Nigeria, they cook it. They cook it into like a paste, and then they serve it with like a soup or sauce. But then we in Northern Ghana steam it. And so we're going to create some fine grains, and then we'll steam it. So what we'll do is that we'll get some water, and then we're going to sprinkle some good amounts in here.
Is this fresh water or warm water?
It's just fresh water, room temperature. And so we'll begin to stir it in. So the whole goal of adding the water is to get or make a grainy texture out of it. And so you would keep adding the water little by little till you're able to derive the texture that you're looking for. So those in culinary school, this is called rubbing in. You can do this with your two hands, and you could do it with just your, like just a single hand.
And how is the proportion? How much of flour for how much of water do you use for this?
So that's one amazing thing about African cooking. So with African cooking, we hardly go with specific measurements. So what I would do is that after this class, I would send a compiled standard recipe that we can share with anyone that has watched the class. But with African cooking, we work with intuition, we work with instincts, we work with, of course, your family size. So you're looking at the number of people that you're going to feed in your home, and then you look at the ingredients with your eye, and then with your heart you can say this is enough for the whole family.
That's really nice. That's how I like to cook as well, to be honest. So for everyone here, stay tuned to our social media channels that we'll be sharing this recipe with everyone later.
So as you can see, we are beginning to get grainy textures. We're beginning to get grainy textures. So we'll keep going on and on. Can you see it? We are beginning to get grainy textures.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And for everyone watching us, if you have any questions for Chef Abiro as we go, please send them in the chat that I'll be reading them to him.
So one amazing thing about this dish is that it is not, only fascinating because we're using the yam peels, but also it has so much nutrients. And so like it has like a lot of iron, a lot of both micro and macro nutrients that are good for your health. And so this is like a meal that's, typically in Northern Ghana, it will be served for lunch. Why? Because in the north, maybe parents will go to the farm, and then when they go to the farm, sometimes they hardly come back home because the distance between the farm and home is like miles and miles away. And so what they do is that they prepare wasawasa and they take it along with them. And so when they're having like a break time during the cultivation of crops, they just serve this because it can be eaten both hot or cold. And it's just like an easy to go meal. One thing about wasawasa is we don't eat it with a sauce. And so it doesn't need so much to make it a complete meal. And so anybody in any economic class could consume wasawasa in the way they can afford to consume it. And everyone would get the opportunity to benefit from the great nutrients that it has.
That's amazing. And we already have people here in the Q&A saying that they also use yam, but they
Yeah.
throw you, and today they're learning that they can actually use it. So that's really interesting. And we have actually people here wanting to know more about you, like when you started to cook and how did you learn it. So if you want to approach this as you cook, feel free.
Yeah, sure. So I would say my love for cooking started from home. I come from a family where my mother strongly believes in gender equality. And so, typically in the African setting, the male sons are responsible for like agricultural produce, the rearing of animals and all that stuff. And then typically the female children are designated to the kitchen. But one thing my mother believes is that everybody needs to share a part in like in work at home. So like your home chores, everyone need to take part in it. And so for my mother, she has a principle that both male and female should go to the kitchen. And she believes that it is just life skills and that everyone needs to be able to cook at some point, because there will be a time where you would maybe travel or go to school and not have your mother or sister or any family member together with you that might be able to cook for you. And so it is very, very important that you learn how to cook. And so it was a turn for my bigger sister, my elder sister, to take up the kitchen. She went to tertiary school, and then she was done with her session or her time in the kitchen. And then it came to my brother, who also took up the kitchen, and his time was done. And then it got to my turn. And so when it was my turn, I think for me, I didn't just do it as like a mere responsibility. I think I had a passion for it. I developed love for the kitchen because I realized that it was a place I could express myself more. It was a place that I could be confident about who I was. And so I took it furthermore. So I went to high school. I studied home economics, where I majored in food and nutrition. And then from there, I went to the university and I studied hotel catering and institutional management. So, in other parts of the world, that is equivalent to hospitality. And so I majored in the culinary aspect. And since then, but one thing for me is that, in culinary school, they tend to teach you French cuisine, Italian cuisine, Chinese cuisine. But growing up, I felt worried. I felt deep within me that I was missing something. And I realized that, yes, I couldn't find what my mother was feeding me. I couldn't find what my grandmother fed me. And so I kept thinking about the indigenous food, and I was like, how can we bring it out? How can I get this amazing news out to the world? And then at some point I decided to major in indigenous cuisine. And it's quite hard here in Africa to major in indigenous cuisine, because usually the hotels and the restaurants and the big places that would want to hire a chef would want to hire a chef that can cook other cuisines like Italian cuisine, Chinese cuisine, French cuisine. And for me, it was a big challenge, and everyone tried to advise me and say, yo, drop this indigenous cuisine thing and then just cook French food or cook Chinese food because you make good money out of it. But for me, it was just something strong within me. And I just felt that this was my calling. This was what I was born to do. And I started to go after it. It wasn't easy at first, but slowly for 5 years now, I've seen the progress. I've seen how I have cooking indigenous food has taken me far, because I was selected to come to Italy last year for the World Food Forum, and I attended the Global Indigenous Youth Forum, where I represented Ghana. And so I can attest to the fact that cooking indigenous food is really good and has so much potential and so much opportunities. And if you are there and you have the same passion as mine, and you're thinking that you might not find a place to belong, this is the place to be. And that's why here in Ghana, I am creating a group, or we've started a group called the Indigenous Gen Z group. I call it the Indigenous Gen Z group. Wow, because we are looking at the Z generation, focusing on indigenous things. So we are bringing the minds of the young people back to indigenous things, because we know that indigenous practices has so much to offer the world that nobody knows about. And that is what the indigenous group that I am starting in Ghana here would be doing. And I'm sure maybe next year at the World Food Forum, I'll be coming with the group as well, so we could deliberate, we could see more, we could look at more possible avenues where we could spread the news about indigenous things. Thank you. And so this is the texture we will get after rubbing in for a while. And can we see it? Yes. So what we would do is that I would get a plate, and then I would demonstrate to you. So we'll begin to sort this out like this continually, like this. So you can see that we have a more grainy texture now. And so from this point, we'll move straight ahead to go to the steamer. So in making wasawasa, we employ the steaming method. So as you can see, I have my water here, and then the steamer, and then like a cheesecloth. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to transfer these grains in here.
That is so nice. It's really grainy, as you mentioned. And we have a question here in the chat if they can use also cassava peelings to make this flour.
Yes, so the thing about cassava is that the cassava peels has lesser, less quantity of starch. So the thing is that with the cassava, when you peel the cassava, you don't get some part of the cassava attached to the peel. The peel just leaves the cassava only, unlike the yam. So for example, if you look at what I have here, you could see that even though we have the peel here, it has some portions of the yam. And this contributes to the starchy component of the wasawasa. And so that is what helps it become grainy when we drop in the water. And so maybe if you want to use the cassava peels, you might need to add a little bit of the cassava in addition. Yes. And so at this point, we will turn on the... Yes. And so we turn on the heat, and then we'll allow this to boil. And once this begins to boil, the steam will come up in here and then steam these grainy textures. And so first of all, you would have to steam it for like 7 minutes for the first half. And then after steaming it for the first 7 minutes, you would take it out, and then you wash it a bit in water. Why do you wash it in water? We wash it in water to take away some of the excess starch that might be still part of the grains that we have created. If not, once it continues to steam without you washing it, it would become mushy. And at the end of the day, you will not get a full grainy texture. And so with this, we'll steam it here for the first 7 minutes, and then we'll take it out and then wash it and bring it back again, and then steam it for just like 5 to 6 minutes, and then you are done. So for the purposes of time, I had pre-made some. So this is just to demonstrate how the original processes go. And then so from this process, I will show you what it would be after steaming it for the first and the second time. This is how it would look like. This is how it would look like. And so after steaming for the first 7 minutes, you take it out, you wash it in water, drain it off, and then steam it again for another 5 minutes. After that, this is the texture you're going to get. This is how it's going to look.
That's amazing how it was transformed into this.
Yes. And so remember, we started with the flour, and then we dropped some water in the flour, and then we rubbed in to give us the grainy texture. And then from then, we steam it for the first 7 minutes. After the first steaming, we'll take it out, we'll wash it in water. After washing it in water, then we'll steam it again for another 5 to 6 minutes. And after that, this is what you're going to get. This is how it's going to look. And at this point, it is ready to eat. And so with wasawasa, like I said, we don't serve it with like a sauce or something. We serve wasawasa with suya spice. And so suya spice or powdered pepper. But today I'm going to use suya spice. So suya spice is first of all made from peanuts. I'm sure this is going to be something else for another class. But suya spice is made from peanuts. So you would crush the peanuts, drain the oil out of the peanuts, and then you would blend it into a paste, make a pretzel out of it, and deep fry. So after that, you would crush it and mix it up with like paprika, cayenne pepper, some salt, and then you would have this. So you typically in Africa, we use this for seasoning or spicing our kebabs. And so if you go to any African street food center, you would find this suya spice on our kebabs. And so today for our wasawasa, we are going to be pairing the suya spice together with the wasawasa. And another thing that we are going to add to the wasawasa is onion infused oil. And so I think for now, we will go straight ahead to making our onion infused oil. Give me a second while I wash my hands. And then we'll move straight ahead to...
While you wash your hands, I'll make a question here in the chat about the powder. And
Yeah.
what did you use when you transformed the peels into the powder after drying? Like, did you use something? They were asking.
Like, you mean like a food additive to help make the powder? Or?
But also that, and also how do you make it? Do you blend it after drying, for example, in the oven? How is this process?
Yes. So if you have like a coffee maker, if you have like something like a coffee maker or like a high-speed blender, you would be able to crush it into pure powder, just like the way you could maybe crush rice or wheat or any other thing into powder. Is the same method that you could crush it into powder. And so you don't need to add anything. Like I said, from the peels, you just dry it. So maybe what you can do is that at this point, you can cut it into smaller pieces. So you could dry it perfectly well and crispy. Then you could blend it into a powder. And then that's it. You don't need to add anything, no food, just the raw yam peels powder.
That's amazing how it can be transformed to the flour.
Yeah. And so we're going to go ahead to make the onion infused oil. So we are going to be using shea butter. So Northern Ghana is known for shea butter. But what people in the world don't know is that shea butter is edible. So we eat shea butter. We use shea butter for our hair, for our skin, and it's so amazing. And that's one thing a lot of people don't know. Shea butter is edible. And so today we'll be using shea butter in our class. And so I am privileged to have an uncle that processes shea butter. that is Paco's enterprise. So he gifted me some shea butter today for our class. And so I'm going to use this raw shea butter in our cooking class today. And so what we are going to do is we're going to slice some onions. I mean, in no particular order, it could be roughly cut. It could be cut into juliennes or stripes. And so you would notice that I have taken the peels of the onion and I am adding it to our peel bank here. I call it the peel bank. And so with just our sliced onions here, we'll go ahead to turn on the stove. No, not you. Yeah. And we do. Yeah. And so go straight ahead and put in some shea butter. Yeah, like this. So you're going to see it's going to melt. So one thing is that shea butter is solid at room temperature, but once you apply heat to it, it's going to begin to melt.
That's great. And this is also a great way to use onions that maybe someone have in their fridge and don't know what to use with it.
Yes, I mean, quite of course, because you might have onions that maybe you used for making something else that you might not know what else to use it for. You could just dump it in some heated oil and then let it caramelize for some minutes for it to get brown. And then you can make some onion infused oil out of it.
We also have another question here in the chat. If the flour that you made can be used to make flatbreads or pies or other kind of recipes.
Yes, surely it can. But maybe the only difference is that have um, it will not have much gluten in it as compared to like wheat flour or what do you call it? Or maybe fonio flour or something. But equally, yes, it could be used for baking. But you might not just expect the same results that you would get when you compare it with, let's say, wheat flour or any kind of flour. So I wish you guys were here to feel the aroma. It's just great when you mix, when the onion is cooking together with the shea butter. It gives you an amazing flavor.
I can only imagine anytime I'm cooking just by regular oil and onions already great. Imagine the
Yeah.
sugar. And how long does it take the process to make the oil?
Oh no. I think depending on how high your heat is, it should take less than 3 to 5 minutes. So one thing about shea butter is that you should always use it when you're ready to eat. Otherwise, when you leave it in a cold room, it would go back to being to its solid state. So in order to break that structure, all you need to do is mix it a little bit with normal vegetable oil. It could be your sunflower oil. It could be your olive oil or anything, just because you might not use it immediately after you're cooking it. And so by adding this together with the shea butter, you maintain the nutrients. I mean, the oil soluble nutrients like vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin K that are still in the shea butter. And then you are able to maintain the structure of the shea butter oil in its liquid form. And so by adding extra vegetable oil to it, you would delay the solidification property of the shea butter.
And then even by adding other oils, can it be stored or not?
Yes, it can. It can. Once you mix it up with other oil, then it breaks the structure of the shea butter and reduces like the hydrogen content in it. And so it stays in its liquid state. But then without you mixing it with other oils, within a few minutes, once the temperature goes back to below 25, down to 15, down to 12 to 10, it would go back to its solid state.
Okay, and how long can it be stored for? What would you say?
I mean, for oils, it never goes bad. So it could be stored for months, sometimes as long as even a year. And so something like this, you do not only need to make it for just your wasawasa, but after you are done with using this for your wasawasa, you can store the remaining and then use it over and over again for anything you want to infuse it with.
That's
So
amazing. Other recipes must taste really good.
yeah. So you can see that the onions are beginning to brown. So you cook it till it browns and gets a bit crispy. So while this is on fire, we can go ahead to make the option B. And so for this class, I'm not only teaching you how to make wasawasa out of the yam peels, but I'm also teaching you to make something else out of wasawasa. So my presumption is that maybe you made too much wasawasa and you weren't able to consume it on that same day or the next day. And maybe you're just tired of how wasawasa looks and you want to make something else out of it. We will not advise you to throw this away also in the bin because that would be food waste. What you can do is to make wasawasa balls out of this. And so to make wasawasa balls, what you would need is you might need maybe some boiled leftover plantains like this. So these are plantains that have been stored in my fridge for close to 2 to 3 days. And so with this, you can use this, or you can use potatoes, you can use yam, or you can use anything that has a starchy component, or anything that has like a starchy element, or something that can act as a binding agent and has flavor as well. So I am choosing leftover plantains because plantains have like a sweet taste that when you pair with the wasawasa makes magic. And so what we are going to do is that we are going to mash the plantains and then we're going to mix it up with the wasawasa. Yeah, so I will not need much. This is enough. And so I'm going to crush this. You can just crush this with your hands or like with a masher or maybe with like a food processor. All you want to do is just to get it in a crushed form where once you add it up with the wasawasa, it's going to act like a binding agent. So it's like, this is just to show you that cooking can go on and on and on in the attempt to avoid food waste. It can go on and on and on. And so after using the waste you have at home to make something else, you don't let that go on a waste as well. You can use it to make something else again.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
So
And
this is a second recipe, right?
yes, like a second recipe out of the same wasawasa. So you can see we have our plantain roughly crushed. And then you can just pick some wasawasa in here like this. Just add it up. And so with that, we'll just add salt. So I have table salt or crushed sea salt here mixed with some black pepper. And then I'm going to use this to season this. And then, I mean, of course, we are in Africa. We need it a little bit spicy. And so I'm going to add a bit of the suya spice, but this could also be like just normal cayenne powdered pepper or paprika. I'm going to mix this as well. And then I'm just going to mix it. Yeah, so hold on a second and come and look at the onions. So you could see at this point, it's brown, it's crispy, and it's well infused. And so at this point, we turn it off and then we let it cool. And then we come back to making our wasawasa balls. So you can see I'm mixing the wasawasa together with the plantains. So like I said, we're just looking for a binding agent. So this could work with boiled leftover potatoes or sweet potatoes or even yam or cassava. I mean, any root tuber that can act, or even beans that can act as a binding agent and can contribute to like the flavor and the taste as well. And so, like I said, I prefer the leftover plantains. Why? Because it has some sweetness, it has a great flavor that I think goes well with the wasawasa. And so you could see, because of the plantain, it's easy to make a ball out of just by molding it. Could make a ball out of it.
And how big do you make these balls?
How?
How big? What's the usual size?
I mean, as close to an egg. So you can make as many as you want, depending on the mixture that you have. And another ingredient that I would like to introduce to everyone, especially not in Africa, is this. This is called Gari in Ghana. It is made from cassava. So it's kind of like some cassava granules or cassava flakes. And this too is another story for another time. But anyway, instead of using maybe breadcrumbs for coating whatever you need to fry, I prefer to use Gari. Why? Because Gari is a staple ingredient that you can literally find in every home in Africa. I mean, especially in Nigeria and in Ghana. And in, I mean, most of the West African countries, you would always find Gari. Gari is something that you would always find in every single home. And so there are times where you might not have bread at home to make some breadcrumbs. You can always use Gari Because one thing about Gari is that once it is deep fried, it gives you a very, very crunchy texture, even crunchier than breadcrumbs. And so I like to use Gari, and it's quite indigenous as well. And so I prefer to stay indigenous throughout in my kitchen. And so you would have something like this. And then with this, you can just go ahead and like break some eggs in a bowl. And then what we are going to do is that we're going to dip the wasawasa balls in the egg, and then we'll dip in the gari. And so we can whisk it just a little bit. And then we'll dip this in here like this, and then into the gari. And then you can see you coat this perfectly. So depending on how crunchy you want the gari to be, you can, after this, you can either dip it back in there again and then do the whole process again, just to ensure that you have a more crunchier texture. So we're going to do that. And then we coat it again. And so this time, when you deep fry it into like a golden brown texture, you're going to get it very crunchy on the outside and soft in the inside. And remember, in the inside, we have plantains, we have our salt, black pepper, and our suya spice. And so we'll do this for all the rest. And then we dip it in again. Take it out. Coat it a second time again. Any more questions?
So far in the chat, not. So I'll use this moment to encourage everyone to send more questions for Chef Abiro. But I'm actually getting hungry watching you cook this, so I need to try this one day. We had a comment, not a question, but we had a comment from someone saying that they were also hungry while watching. So I know I'm not the only one.
Yeah, so remember we had put this on fire for like the 7 minutes. So from this moment, this is the moment where you take it out and then you wash it and you bring it back again. And then you steam it up for the next 6 minutes and then you're done.
It's so interesting. As it was right now on the stove, it kind of looked like soy protein.
Yes, yes, exactly. I'm sure when we assess the nutritional content of the yam peels, we might be able to find some traces of some amino acids as well, specifically the ones that are responsible for like hair growth and growth of nails as well. And so sometimes people are surprised as to how people from northern Ghana have like great looking hair, good nails, great looking skin. All this can be attested to what we eat. And so that is why it is important for people to go back to their roots. It is very important to look back at indigenous practices, indigenous ways, because indigenous practices and ways has so much to offer the world that has been neglected.
Yeah, I have to agree, and it's really important. And we thank you a lot for being here and sharing this recipe with us. I've never seen something like this before, and it's amazing what you can do.
Yeah, so at this point, can go ahead to deep fry. So we can have another pan. And here, turn it on. You can deep fry as well with a mixture of your shea butter and then your cooking oil. I always like to add a little bit of the shea butter always, even when I'm using other oils, because the shea butter has like this unique umami flavor that it adds to all your dishes, and it's just amazing. I mean, like you can attest to what the French people always say. They say butter makes everything better, but at this point, shea butter makes everything better. And so we are gonna wait till the oil is a bit heated, and then we will deep fry our wasawasa balls. And as that is getting prepared, we are gonna make use of our waste bank. And so if you look in here, I have onion peels, carrot peels. And one thing people don't know is that out of these peels, you could make an amazing sauce out of it. And so I'm going to make a sauce that we are going to use to pair with the yam balls that is going to give it like a Michelin style vibe. And then we will pair the indigenous wasawasa with the suya spice and the onion infused oil. And so at this point, we'll just go ahead and throw this into the pan like this. We throw this into the pan like this. So you can see this could include like peels from garlic, onion, carrots, basically peels of vegetables that you will literally have thrown in the bin would come in here. And then all you need to do is just add a little bit of water to it. And then some salt to taste. And then straight ahead, you just cook this till it's soft. And that's it.
That's amazing. I love how we're learning different things in one class all at once.
Yeah. And so like this, straight on the fire. It's gonna cook and soften. And once it's softened, we'll just mix it up with some cooking cream and then blend it up smooth and then pair it with our yam balls. And so I'm ready to fry my yam balls.
Can
And
you
one thing,
also put these yam balls in the oven?
yes, you could. Yes, you could bake this. You could bake this, but I would prefer that you bake it under low heat and slowly, so that because you need to one thing you need to remember is that the wasawasa is cooked. The wasawasa is cooked. The plantains are cooked. So all you just need to do is just to get the browning and the crispiness around it. If you have a deep fryer as well, you could just toss this in for, I mean, close to 3 to 5 minutes, and it should be ready because you'll get a golden brown, crispy crust on it that would be great to munch on.
I can imagine the contrast between the softness and the crunchiness must be great.
I know, right?
And also, how high are you using the heat right now for this?
So for this, it's I think mid-high. So if it's a scale of 1 to 5, we are at 3. Yeah. So just to ensure that it is pretty hot, but not too hot to get it burned. And the thing is that everything is already cooked, so you don't want to cook it for so long. What you're looking for is just get golden brown.
And it's also getting golden brown pretty fast.
Yeah, pretty fast. And that is one attribute of using the Gari instead of the breadcrumbs, because Gari is it's also a starchy root that is made from cassava. And so once heat is applied, it gets to caramelize in no time. Then we are good to go. So at this point, we could take our wasawasa balls out. And I'll use a tongue. You can see how fast this cooked.
Yeah, it's amazing. I thought it was going to take longer.
No, and you see, that's the thing, we now find out, oh, I missed one. We now find ourselves in a society where we feel like indigenous food really take time, but that is not true. Actually, indigenous foods were created to be equally as fast foods as possible and not lose its nutritional value. So you can see how fast this was made, and we still have everything intact, the plantains, everything. And you could see that the Gari has made sure that everything stays moist in there. And this is just the perfect fast food. And so for now, we'll just visit our waste bank, which is our carrots, carrot peels, onion peels, and all that in here. We're going to cook this till it softens. So while we wait for the carrot peels to cook softly, I'll go ahead to teach you how we serve. I'll go ahead to teach you how we serve the wasawasa, the indigenous way. And so this here. So typically in my hometown, we would be using clay pots and maybe calabashes to dish our meals. But because of camera and the way we want it to look, we would be going with a ceramic white plate. And so I have a scoop in here. So I will just take a generous amount of wasawasa in here. And trust me, wasawasa is so light that you could eat it at any time. At any time. And so you could have wasawasa as breakfast, you can have it as lunch, you can have it as supper, anytime, anywhere, you can always eat wasawasa. Lights, right? Yeah. And so typically this is our wasawasa. And then on this, you would have like your suya spice. Can we see this? And then this directly goes over the wasawasa like this.
Okay, interesting. And does it has a strong taste?
You mean the suya spice? The suya spice is spicy because it has traces of cayenne pepper in there. So it's quite hot. And so when you're making it, you would have to use a type of pepper that is good for you or the quantity that is good for you. But for we in Africa, we like to use a lot of spicy seasonings and stuff. And so like this, and then the next thing we would do is just have our onion infused oil. Where did I drop my spoon? Okay, yeah. And so you can see this.
Oh, that looks so good.
Yes. So this is the onion infused oil. And then this goes right on top of the wasawasa like this. And then you drizzle the infused oil in it. I mean, the cameramen are salivating already.
I can imagine people there was excited for this to be over so they can try some as well.
Yes, so typically this is how this would be served. And then this can go with some deep fried or grilled mackerel on the side. And then you might want to give it like some Michelin star vibe, and so you put like some Dill on it. And then we are good. And so this is how it would look like.
This looks amazing.
Yeah. And so you could realize that we didn't need to make a sauce for the indigenous wasawasa. This is how it goes. Just the onion infused oil. You can see the onions there. You can see the suya spice. And then you pair this with fish. You can ignore it if you're vegan. This can also go with some mushrooms, can go with some suya chunks, and anything else you want to pair this with. I'm sure people in Europe might want to pair this with some beef steak or something else, but as simple as this is how it looks.
And it's really showing how beautiful and how good such simple recipes can be, right?
Yeah, very, very simple thing. All right, so we'll go straight ahead to check on our sauce. Yeah, so at this point, it has cooked softly, and so you could see, and this already smells good because it's a mixture of so many vegetables, and this smells amazing. And all we need to do is we're going to dump this into the blender, add some cooking cream to it, season it a little bit, and then our sauce is ready. And so wasawasa go here, and then come on, blender. Okay, great. So we have a blender here, and then we're just going to throw this in the blender like this. And so all those who have been throwing away their carrot peels and the onion peels, I charge you today to repent.
And you throw this inside with water as well. I'm thinking about using this for making soup. It must be amazing.
Yes. I mean, because already you have like vegetable stock out of this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you have vegetable stock out of this. And then
Personally, that's how I make my vegetable stock, but I've always been throwing away these peels
no,
after I make
you
my
shouldn't.
stock.
And so now you have like an option for the residue. And then we're going to add some cooking cream as well. So you could use Bambara milk.
What kind of milk is that? Sorry.
So this milk is made from Bambara beans.
Oh,
So
interesting.
it's,
I don't know that
yes, so
one.
this is totally vegan. And so we're going to put some of this in here. And one thing it does is that it doesn't only give it the creamy texture, but it also helps alterate the concentration of the orange. And so, like in culinary school, they tell you that if you want to get the color yellow, what you need to do is mix white and then orange, and then you get the color yellow. And so we are applying that same science in here in the kitchen. And so once we blend this together with the cooking cream, it's going to reduce the intensity of the orange and it's going to give us a beautiful color. And so we'll go ahead to blend. Yeah, so we're going to take all this out.
And can you also use other types of milk, like coconut milk or other types? Or is there any specific consistency of the milk that you would prefer for this sauce?
Is it? Is it? Is it? Okay, now. Oh yeah, I missed. Did someone ask a question? Sorry.
Yeah, no, no worries. I thought that because of the blender, you might have turned it off. No, I was asking if there's other kinds of milk that you can use with this, any specific consistency of milk that you would recommend, or like coconut milk, for example, could also be used.
Yes, coconut milk could be used, peanut butter milk. So we in Northern Ghana here have peanut butter milk. So we have peanut butter milk, we have Bambaran beans milk, that could be used. Full cream milk could be used, evaporated, skimmed milk, any kind of milk could be used, depending on your dietary needs. Yes, but we are using Bambaran beans milk because that is indigenous to Northern Ghana. So yes, so we've done the first blend and it's not totally smooth. The first blend is not totally smooth. And so we're going to blend it again till we get a smooth consistency. But it's not really compulsory. It depends on how you like your sauces. Because generally there are people who like their sauces quite chunky with some of the vegetables still being in it. And so, but I prefer it being smooth because it gives you a great feel on the plate. So, this out. So at this point, we have a great consistency now. And you can see we have a nice looking color. And so what we're gonna do right now is get our plates. Our plate in there, and then we're gonna put a generous amount of the sauce. So if you watch closely, you realize I didn't season the carrots again because when I was cooking it, I gave it some salt and black pepper, and that is enough. Yes. So with our tweezers, we're gonna put this here. And then I'm gonna look for some amazing dill.
And as you said before, this is really looking like a Michelin star plating here.
Yes, and that's the potential of indigenous food. Because you see, one thing is that people don't believe that indigenous food is marketable. You know, one thing is that they feel it's so local that it can go anywhere. And so business, you can't relate indigenous food to business. And that is wrong, because indigenous food has all the potentials you'll be looking for to make an exciting dish. And this is quite simple to make, very, very easy to make. We could decide to pair this with even some fish as well, or just have it on its own as an amazing meal.
That's great. And it's incredible how you managed to get sort of the same leftover and turn it into two different dishes and even sauces with the pills that you got from the ingredients.
Yeah. And this is the potential of indigenous food. And so I am super grateful to the World Food Forum and the Global Youth Action for championing this cause, because this is going to bring more education on how to prevent food waste in our kitchens, because day by day, these are things that we throw away. And these are things that if we had preserved, is going to feed more stomachs. It's going to feed more people, because there are so many times where people talk about hunger in Africa, hunger in parts of the world, and some of these things can be solved by us and by using things that we consider as waste in our kitchens to make amazing dishes as this. And I'm super proud of my indigenous food, because it has the potential to solve such an amazing problem. And so for me, it is Wasawasa to the world. I would like to say a big thank you to Rose, Rose gave me this amazing kitchen space that I'm using right here in Accra, Ghana. And one thing I like about Rose is that he supports young talents and people who have abilities that have been hidden for a long time. And so thank you so much, Rose, for this wonderful opportunity. And I thank my crew, my brother, the whole team that is helping me to put this thing together. It's just been super amazing. In the recipe and in the bio, I will share with you the name of the media team as well that is helping me to put this production together. And I would also like to thank the Global Indigenous Youth Unit of the FAO because they are my home now and they've given me all the support that I need. And so, yeah, I want to give a big shout out to the media team as well. They're called Tackle Hubs. So I'm sure you could find them on Instagram or anywhere else. And this class has been fruitful. I would like to receive some questions before I go. Any question so far?
Actually, yes. Just a second, let me find it here. They're asking more about you, if you also experiment with traditional recipes and ingredients, like creating new unexpected combinations, or if your main focus is preserving and sharing genuine Ghanaian cuisine.
You know, so one thing about a chef is that a chef is a doctor of food. And so as a doctor of food, you tend to specialize in all areas. Yours is to be able to solve problems. Yours is to be able to tackle problems. Yours is to be able to share knowledge and improve the well-being of people. And so, yes, I look at using underutilized ingredients. I look at promoting ingredients from Northern Ghana. I look at ways of using food waste in the indigenous settings to make amazing dishes as well. And so it's kind of like a great call to do justice to the indigenous movement and to people as well. And I'm very, very particular about children because they growing up, they are in a vulnerable state. And so what I look out also is to be able to make amazing meals that tackle problems that children face in communities like anemia, malnutrition, and also be able to solve starvation problems in rural areas in Ghana. And so it's a big call, it's a big initiative, and I am super grateful for such amazing platforms to be able to promote knowledge about indigenous cuisines, indigenous practices, and yeah. Thank you so much. Any other
Abiro,
question?
I wanted to thank you actually for your work. It's truly inspiring. It's amazing to follow you through the World of Forum last year as well, and your work here. So thank you so much for joining us. We don't have any more questions now in the chat, but as we talked before, you can share this recipe with us and we'll disseminate it to those who sign up for the masterclass and to our social media as well to reach as many people as possible. And I really hope that we get to work again together in the future. Thank
Yeah,
you.
sure. Yeah. And one more thing before everyone goes. And so my team and I are putting together a world tour. And so what we're going to do is that we're going to be visiting you in your country. And what we're going to do is that we're going to share indigenous knowledge. We're going to share with you indigenous products from Ghana. And like I mentioned, we are targeting the Z generation. So the group is going to be called the Indigenous Gen Z group. And what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be bringing indigenous knowledge down to you in all your cities. And so we'll be bringing Africa to you, right to your doorstep. And so we're visiting cities like Amsterdam, because we have a couple of restaurants, a couple of people that are going to be inviting us to share some indigenous recipes as well. And in doing that, we're going to come together with a couple of products from indigenous entrepreneurs that would want to advertise their product as well to the world. And so watch out for the Indigenous World Tour. Maybe we might be coming to your city, and then I'll get a chance to showcase this amazing meals to you to taste them by yourself. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity.
It's amazing. I'm really excited to see how that's gonna go in the next few months. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Abiro. And thank you everyone for joining. It was a pleasure. And keep in touch that next month we'll have the third episode of our culinary series. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.